podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
When we talk about vocations, we don't often hear about experiences of discerning out of the seminary or religious life. Julius Balita joins us this week to talk about his experience of discerning a call to the priesthood, of his time at seminary, and of the process of discerning that he was not called to become a priest, and of what it was like when he left seminary and was readjusting to life outside of the seminary. We hope that this is helpful for those who have had that experience or who are discerning a vocation to priesthood or religious life, but also for those who might be undergoing some big transitions in their lives.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Peace to all people. I just thought of that because Julius put his hand up in a peace sign, and it's coming. I don't know. I keep seeing Christmas decorations everywhere. That's why.
Yeah.
So that's all I can think about. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Not bad.
Not
You know,
bad.
Can't complain.
Right.
Nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's okay. How about you, Nicole? How are you doing?
I had one of those days today where anyways, it was just one of those days where yesterday I was like, I think I'm on top of all the things. And then a couple things happened at the end of the day that I realized, oh no, I'm really not on top of a few things. And then there's just, anyway, it all worked out fine. But I just I felt I was very scattered in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It's that point of the semester in teaching where everyone's kind of tired and everyone's kind of, and apparently it happens for profs too, where you're just like, what's going on? But no, I mean, that makes me sound like I'm completely disorganized mess. I'm only a small portion of disorganized. I'm just partial disorganized mess, not total.
Nice. Sweet.
Partial for sure.
I mean, that's pretty good for a first year prof, like for teaching the courses for the first time. I'd say, your hair looks like it's not, like it looks done, and
it's in a messy bun,
dressed.
but yeah, thanks.
Okay, excellent. That's good. Yeah. So that's great. You don't have banana peels stuck to your clothing, so it's good. Yeah.
No, that was yesterday, so it's
okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How are you, Julius? And then you and Rachel can say, I'm interested in this class, because before we started, you guys were talking about the class that you were in. It sounds very interesting. Yeah. So how are you? And then what's the class story?
For sure. I'm doing really well. Actually, I just came back from the cottage up like somewhere in Muskoka. I don't know. I wasn't the driver, so I didn't really pay attention. I was just with a bunch of friends, and we just hung out there for a weekend, and it was a great time to just relax and kind of wind down, I guess, and get away from the city.
Yeah.
So I'm doing really well. I'm really relaxed and refreshed. So
that's good.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh,
very grateful.
Maybe we can introduce. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we should introduce you. But your hair looks like freshly cut or something. Did you have a haircut? It looks.
I got a haircut for this podcast.
Dude, it looks good. I was like, your hair looks like.
Actually, I really needed a haircut, and the motivation was to do it for this because I could just kind of delay it for a while or just get it, and so this gave me a reason to just get it right away. So
there you go. I mean, we should point out for those, if you are listening and you are new, that there is also a YouTube version of this. So Julius didn't get his haircut for just a simply audio podcast. That would be funny.
That would be hilarious. I didn't think of that. Yeah,
true. I mean, that's okay. When you feel fresh, you talk fresh. I don't know. It's like, I don't know what that sentence
sounds like a Febreze ad.
Yeah, that's true. Oh man.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, sorry. So I interrupted that. So Rach, do you want to, what's your story with class?
Oh yeah. So Julius and Julius, you can talk about this in your, like, we want him to share a little bit about, who he is and all that kind of stuff. So you'll hear more about it, but we were in a philosophy class. I think it was epistemology. I think that was the class we were in together.
Oh boy.
You don't even remember. My favorite, that was the first time I met Julius, actually. And I think you were literally my favorite person in that class because you were so funny. You were I don't want to say you were lost all of the time.
Most times.
But like you were like really unabashedly, like you just expressed it. You're like, I just remember we talked about Plato, and this is my favorite part of the whole class. We talked about Plato, and Plato's idea is like there's the ideals, like so the ideal circle, like the idea of a circle, and then there's the real circle, but it'll never be like the ideal. Like they're all kind of, we're trying to reach the ideal. Okay. And I'm probably butchering it. I'm really sorry for everyone who's like a philosophy expert and
like the circleness of a circle.
Exactly, the circleness of a circle. Exactly. And like we were looking at like clocks and all this kind of stuff. We're just talking about the circle, and at the end of class, Julius is just like, because we have a chance to ask the professor, like say comments and ask questions, and he's just like, honestly, I don't know what's going on. He's like, there's clocks. We're talking about circles. I don't get it. Like I was just dying. It's my favorite thing ever. At so question great. Time, I literally waited for you, Julius. Like, what's he going to say? It was so awesome to me. It was nuts. Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's how I
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of my philosophy classes were pretty confusing, I would say. But especially that class, I remember that one because, he was talking about the perfect circle, and he was drawing circles on the board. He was telling us about wheels on a bus. Is that not a perfect circle? And I was like, what? I'm pretty sure that is. Like, why wouldn't it be a circle? And so I remember asking that question. Like, I don't know what a circle is anymore. Like, I look at the clock and it seems like it's a circle to me. In my head, I was like, I'm definitely gonna fail this class because I don't know what's going on.
That's awesome.
It was so good.
But I was not afraid to ask these questions because like I didn't know what was going on, and so I might as well just ask it. Get it out there. Hopefully other people feel the same way, that this is a little confusing.
That's right. I feel like philosophy is one of those subjects, or maybe the only subject, that on an exam you could just write I don't know, and that's the correct answer. Like,
right.
Like that's fair. You write anything else, then
you write it depends.
Sometimes.
That's awesome. That reminds me, actually, we had I have my convocation this week on Monday, which was super exciting. Thank you. That's awesome. We were lined up to go into the chapel for convocation, and I started doing that song, like just with my
like humming it, singing it.
Just like humming it, except for it wasn't that song. It was the bridal march. So it was like dun, 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 and then we were like, wrong song. But anyways, I was gonna actually say the funniest part of convocation was Monsignor Nuska. He gave the convocation address, and so if you've ever met Monsignor Nuska, he is amazing. Like, he is such a great, like, good man, very kind, so smart, like operates on a whole other plane. Right. And he studied the book of Revelation, so that's like on a whole other plane anyways. So taking Revelations with him, like, was like, you don't understand half of what is being talked about at any point. And then my mom was kind of live texting me during the convocation that I only saw after. So it was like, love you, so proud of you, great job, your grandparents would be so proud of you. And there was this one line that just said, just not sure what this guy is saying. Monsignor Nuska gave the address, and she was like,
it's the circles thing all over again. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah, why? Exactly. Have you had any courses like that, Nicole, where you're like,
yeah, you know what? I've taken one philosophy course in my life. Well, it was a Christian ethics course, but with one of the philosophy profs, and it broke my brain for like 6 months. I just felt very confused about everything. And then after that, it settled into, I think it was probably one of the most impactful courses, actually, of my whole music therapy degree, which is interesting.
Wow.
But definitely a highlight. And also definitely, I was like, this is I don't understand what's going on. What's that? Why is this? It's hurting me, but it was good.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like Rachel and I got to take Christology together from Father Gilles Mongeau, and that was also brain breaking a little bit.
I loved it though. Yeah, maybe I just like getting my brain broken.
Yep.
Just like breaking my brain.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. It's good, especially when you realize your brain is breaking, but there's like a little part of your brain that is grasping some little tidbits. So you're like, I'm not a total dummy, even if partial dummy.
Like, mostly dummy,
mostly
slightly
dummy,
not dummy.
Slightly.
It goes. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this in courses where there can be the course where you understand most things. You're like, I just have to get that last like 20% of the things figured out, and that's great. and then you feel really good. You're like, I know 80% of the things, go me.
Yeah.
And then there's the other courses where you're like, mostly you don't understand everything. And for everything you do understand, you're like, yes, I rock, go me.
Yeah.
That's
You know what I mean? But really, you
that's so
still only know
true.
like 5% of the things,
Yeah.
but you
yeah.
feel
Yeah.
really accomplished
Yeah.
because it's something. You know
That
what
is
I
so
think?
true. It's like
Yeah.
physics for me. Physics was like that. It's like, I just don't like know
Mhm.
forces and air, like vectors, and it was
Yeah.
just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's shaking
yeah.
their head right now, like,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
let's not
I don't-
talk about
yeah.
Not
that.
going there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you study
Anyways.
in your undergrad, Julius?
I was a
question.
business student. I
you
majored in
were?
marketing and
Fun.
I minored in organizational leadership.
Okay.
Cool.
Excellent. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
So so definitely a little bit different than philosophy, but
Oh,
that's good.
easily. Yeah. Business class is like, tell me what you're trying to sell me, or what's your business plan.
Yeah.
And philosophy is like, so how do you feel? Like, what do you think about this?
What
And what are
is?
circles?
Yeah. What
That's
is?
right.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah.
So yeah, completely different for sure.
This
Yeah.
is good. So I'll just turn it over to you then, and we'll start with you. You can just tell us a little bit about your background and, just your life, who you are.
Background, like
Yeah.
right, like Kyle
Like,
Lowry in the back.
well,
I'm just
when-
joking.
yeah.
Which, by the way,
Yeah,
big
what's on the
fan.
top shelf there? And yeah.
Just so, so I just
Kyle
got a bunch of
Lowry,
hats, but
Hold
right
on, these
there-
ladies may not know. Kyle Lowry was a Raptor, probably
Mhm.
one of the greatest.
I do
Just-
remember
if not the
that.
greatest for
Okay,
sure.
if not the
So
greatest.
I just have a photo of him from Sports Illustrated
Nice.
cover holding the trophy that we won a couple years ago.
Mhm.
Just framed because I have to remember it. I'm a big Raptor fan. So that's my
Nice.
background physically, I guess.
Right.
Here.
Yes.
That's great.
Now your existential background. I'll just go into that.
Yeah.
um,
Do you have any
so
circles in your room, like in the background?
Not
No. Okay,
not
sorry,
any
I'll stop now.
perfect ones, that's for sure. I've learned something. So my name is Julius. I'm 27 years old now. I'm Filipino, and I was I was raised in Scarborough. That's the better way to put it.
Mhm, mhm.
I come from a Catholic family, Catholic Filipino family, so we're very devoted. I did everything from elementary school up, like first confession, first communion, confirmation. But when I went into high school, I guess the faith started to be a little bit more confusing. And my parents stopped nagging me, I guess, to go to mass. And so it was just up to me, I guess. And I would still go quite frequently, but then over time, I became more of a Christmas and Easter Sunday goer. And I never stopped really believing in God, but I guess I never really realized how much I needed him or how beautiful the Catholic faith was. And so that was me kind of just drifting in high school. And then when I got into university, all I wanted to do was just study and make new friends and have fun. But it wasn't until my second year of university where I was just walking from one class to another, but I just entered a student center all because I just wanted to use the bathroom before I went to class. But when I went into the student center, I realized that all these clubs were just promoting themselves. And so I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm just gonna grab a bunch of free stuff from every club.
True.
And I walked into the washroom and then they got out. I remember this girl just randomly like ran up to me and was like, hey, do you want a free pen? And I was like, free pen? Yeah, like of course. I will take anything that is free. And I remember her leading me to the booth and she was like, if you get this free pen, all you gotta do is sign up for our club. And I was signing up for all these clubs anyways. But I remember them and it said Ryerson Catholic, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna join them, but I'll put in my schedule and kind of just take this pen and leave. A week later, I remember I received a phone call and it was another student saying, oh my gosh, like I just want to meet you. Like, I'm glad you signed up for our faith study. And I was like, oh shoot, like what did I sign up for? Like these people have my number and my email. Like,
That's awesome.
And then so being the good guy that I am, I said, yeah, I'll come and meet you. I'm excited to, all that stuff. But my intent was to say, oh, like, thank you for your your time for meeting me, but I'm not really interested.
Mm.
And so I meet the student, and he's just trying to sell me on this CCO faith study called Discovery. And to me, I was like, well, I kind of learned this in school already. Like I kind of think I know what it means to be Catholic.
Mm.
But a missionary came by, and he just started talking to me about his faith. And I had really realized at that moment that I was taking my faith for granted.
Mm.
And I was like, you know what, I'll just give this a shot. Like, I'm Catholic. Again, I never stopped believing in God, but like I just thought I knew everything. And then after taking that faith study, actually maybe even during it, I really realized I didn't know anything.
Mm.
I didn't know about God's love. I didn't even know the Holy Spirit, for example, was a person. Like, I thought it was just a dove.
Right.
I didn't think, yeah, I
Totally
didn't
fair,
think
yeah.
about the Holy Spirit at all. I didn't even know Jesus was God. Like, there's just like these basic truths
Yeah.
that I guess I just never really thought about or taught or was taught. But I just started to learn these new things and started to grow in my faith, still like struggling, I guess, through university. But it wasn't until my fourth year I went to this conference called Rise Up, and it was being held at in Montreal that year. And I remember going to Eucharistic adoration and finally like feeling God's love so powerfully in my heart. And I remember tears like tripping. And yeah, like I've never felt that love before. And I kind of had this feeling or this experience that I really still can't describe, but I knew that this was it. Like, this is where I wanted to be. This is what love is, I guess. And I remember being in school. It was my fourth year, and I was taking business classes at Ryerson. And I thought about, like, maybe this is not what I really wanted to do. I was in school for business, but like most of my time in university, after I guess my first faith study, was spent at the Ryerson Catholic Student Center. So I knew that there was something there that I kind of vibed with me, I guess, and connected with me. And so after a lot of discernment and good feedback from the missionaries at the time and some priests and other students, I decided to do these two missionary programs. One was called Totus Tuus, which is a archdiocesan, I guess, summer camp for kids, and as well as CCO. So I decided to also become a missionary because of the experience and the love that they shared with me as a student, never giving up on me every time I messed up, kind of just like really intentionally accompanying me throughout this whole way of my conversion and never leaving my side. And so I love that experience for me, and I was very grateful for that. And I guess I wanted to in turn share that with other students and to really know the love of Christ and to see people grow. That's one of my favorite things, is to kind of see like that light bulb kind of just click or that turn on in someone's brain, and they're like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah,
Jesus loves me that much, like, you're crazy.
yeah,
That's definitely one of my favorite feelings and experiences. And so throughout my time with CCO, I was able to really meet a lot of clergy and just young faithful Catholics. I remember I met these seminarians when I was on Totus Tuus my first year, and so I was this new converted guy, I guess. I didn't even know the Angelus. I remember all the returning missionaries would start this prayer, and I was like, man, if this is how Totus Tuus is gonna be, I don't know if I'm gonna last. Everyone's praying the Angelus. Everyone seems so holy. So I didn't know if I could fit in. But I knew I was called to be there. I guess that was my motivation to stay and apply and stay, because I knew God was calling me there, even though I didn't know my theology. I didn't know the Angelus. I didn't know these things. But on Totus Tuus, I met these young seminarians who were normal dudes who liked basketball like me. They liked I guess food. I don't know, like they just had personality. I guess is what I'm
right.
trying to say.
Yeah.
Young guys with personalities. And I was just very intrigued by them because it's like you're giving up like everything else to pursue this call. Like this is different and inspiring. It's like, you know, they kind of piqued my curiosity. And then you have other guys who are really discerning, and it's like, man, you too, like you're thinking about this too, like why, you know? But you could see from these guys like this true joy that they had. And yeah, I guess I had that perception of seminarians that they're just, you know, like, you know, read books and pray all the time, and which they do.
Yeah.
But
Right.
these
Yeah.
guys were just normal guys that I really clicked with. So I guess that was just the initial, I guess, stirring in my heart to kind of just give the priesthood a chance, because I never even thought of being a priest as a thing. I didn't know anything about vocations. Never heard the word until probably university. And so to meet all these guys and to see that they're just normal, and to just learn a lot about the Catholic faith, it was just kind of just piquing my curiosity. And I'm just, again, a curious guy, like Rachel, like in class, like I'll ask questions. It might sound dumb or not. I'll just ask it, try to kind of poke at random things that you say, not like maliciously or anything. I'm just like genuinely lost, like, or curious, like I don't know, like
awesome.
tell me about something. I'm like, cool, like what is that?
So what was that like for you, like asking those kind of, like what happened for you then in those years when you were a missionary kind of in Ryerson, or like getting to know more seminarians, or like feeling those, like having the questions come up for you? Like what was that discernment that kind of eventually brought you into the seminary?
Yeah, I think there was a reason why I was asking all those questions. Like I guess there was just a desire in my heart to want to know more, even though I guess at the time I didn't know, oh, I actually want to join the seminary. But it was just like, these are just so interesting that I've never heard. Like I've never heard a guy say, oh yeah, I've given up. For example, one of my good buddies from seminary, he, like, I guess he essentially gave up a hockey career to pursue that, to enter seminary, or like even to give up the married life. It's like, what are you guys doing? I don't know, but there's something interesting about you guys. It's something different about you guys. And so I guess those questions just genuinely made me want to learn more about the priesthood and what discernment is. And so after speaking to them and talking to a lot of clergy, I joined this discernment group called Quo Vadis, and it's run by the archdiocese as well, just like for guys discerning. And we kind of go through like a book study and talk about the priesthood, and you know, what are fears that you have, what are some questions that you have. And I remember one fear that I always had was like, how am I not going to get married? Like I don't understand how I can just do that. And Filipinos, we're very communal, I guess. Like we're big on community, and we're just big on families, and we love our priests too, but it's just kind of like, just like not me type of thing, you know, like that guy can be the priest and we'll love him, but I just don't want to be that guy. I want to get married. And so I was just kind of thinking like, how can you just go through this? But again, you get deeper into your prayer life, you get deeper into learning about the church, and it was just like me falling in love with Jesus and wanting to get to know him more, and wanting to get to know the church. And at one point I was like, man, like I don't know if a woman can satisfy my heart the way that God is right now. And it was going through this discernment process in Quo Vadis, and then eventually I joined this other one called the Associates, which is like guys that are really really thinking about it. But it wasn't a smooth process to that too. There's a lot of internal fighting, like because at first it's like, you know, to be a CCO missionary, you kind of like give up everything. Like you just want to do what God wants you to do. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll just go to that path. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that. And then when God kind of just said, oh, maybe kind of just think about the seminary, it's like, okay, like slow down. Like
Yeah.
I just had my conversion here.
Right.
And you told me to like be a CCO missionary. And I love this job. But now you're telling me I gotta go to the seminary. And that was like a big fight for me and God, because I just felt like I was giving up a lot. And I think when you grow closer to your relationship with Jesus, the more is demanded of you. And that's a good thing. I guess some people might take it as the wrong thing. It's like, oh, I have to give up another thing. But once I got over that initial like again, like I have to do this again, I was just more open to that call. But again, it was not a smooth ride. There was a lot of times where one day I was so gung-ho about going to the seminary and becoming a priest. I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna help change the church, like things like that. And then there are days where like it's like, you know what? I'll just tell Father Chris, who was the vocations director at the time. I was like, tell Father Chris that I'm not that interested anymore. So it's a lot of that back and forth in my discernment into the seminary. But eventually that call got so strong where I couldn't think about it as a what if, like maybe go through my life and think, oh yeah, what if I actually went to the seminary? I had to just go. There's one point where I couldn't delay it any further. That God's call was so strong that I would be, I think, doing him a disservice to not even try. So I went to come and sees. I went to two. The first one I came and saw and left. The second one is when I was like, all right, I think I'm here to stay. But it took a lot of convincing from God and from my peers to just get in there and try it out and see what God is trying to tell me and to discern the priesthood fully. So I guess that's my initial journey to get in there. It's long-winded
awesome.
answer, but
no, but it's good. It's good background, right? Because I think it's like, because we definitely want to kind of hear about some of the stuff that was hard about discerning out, but I think it's not really helpful to hear about that without actually hearing about what it was like discerning in, you know? So so along
Wait,
those
can
lines,
can I just like reflect for a second?
Yes.
I think what's really, Julius, what I'm like thinking about is that God calls us to things one step at a time, right? I feel like that's what I'm so far hearing from your story. Like he legitimately sounds like you had a legitimate call to go to the seminary, right? And like to be at that step. And I just think of how often in life it's so easy to, like, you know, even in just like in dating or in school or whatever it is, to think, okay, I'm called to do this thing right now and I'm excited for it. And here's my whole life ahead of me. And this is the trajectory of my life. And assuming that rather than just being in the moment of, okay, I'm called to this right now and we'll just go one step at a time, you know? So I think that even just as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh yeah, what a beautiful example of that. Just kind of step by step. Okay, God calls me to go to seminary. All right, I'll go. And then, you know, we see what happens next. So
yeah. No, that's good.
There's one thing I thought too is like what you said about God, the closer you get to the Lord, like the more he demands of you. And sometimes that, like, that's a good thing, but sometimes it doesn't feel like a good thing. And I think you really explain that well, because it's not easy to do that. And I think sometimes it can create like a moment of crisis in faith. I've seen that, like a lot of people that I know have experienced that, where they like grow closer to the Lord, and then some really difficult circumstance or cross or decision comes their way. And it can really make you doubt the goodness of God, that he would make that big of an ask of you that you feel like you can't fulfill. Like he's asking something of you that you're like, I can't do this. And like, why would a God who loves me ask this of me? But I think, so I think it's very honest the way that you kind of describe that, but also that like the more that you fall in love with the Lord, the more possible those things become, even if they're not like easier, they're just more possible. And they suddenly become, you can walk through that door where you couldn't even take another step forward before, you know. And it's kind of it's really cool to have an example in your story of like of that happening, even though it wasn't necessarily easy for you finally to take that step into seminary. There's something that happened. There's some courage. There's some grace that God gave you, but you stuck with it. I think that's really important, because sometimes I think when God makes those asks of us, we can let go of that journey completely. Be like, I just can't do it, and just leave at that point, but there's more, and there's so much more. Like your story, we're going to hear even more, but I think that's really helpful and a really great example, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I think maybe, why don't you share with us a little bit about, because I'm sure people, after hearing about like the, how you got to the seminary, it would be good to hear what it was like at the seminary. Like, what were some of the like good parts that were like joy filled or like life-giving? What were some of the things that were hard, and then where those things kind of moved to bring you to a place where like the Lord was calling you to something different than the seminary,
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the hard part, because that was the slap in the face I got when I entered seminary. In a good way, again, in a good way. Because I was fighting with God about this call, like, do I have to go? Like, please don't let me. And then eventually being like, all right, I do want to go. And then upon entering, like that first day, like it really felt like God left me. Like I really felt this like, whoa, like why are you leaving me? Like I was so desolate in my prayer life. Just being there, like it was cool. Now like these seminarians who I was friends with before, now they're like my brothers. Like I get to live with them, get to pray with them, I get to eat with them, all this stuff. And that was cool. But at the same time, internally, I was like, whoa, like God, you wanted me here, and now it feels like you're not here, even though you live like literally across the room. It was weird. It was a weird feeling of and I say slap in the face because that's how it just felt.
Totally.
But again, God is so good, and I loved every moment, because it was through that desolation, I guess I'll talk about a little bit more later, but that I was able to really find him in a deeper way, and really trust and love him more. But yeah, so I guess I started off very like, oh man, like this is a cool place, but like I'm not having that much fun. But it looks like I'm having a lot of fun, I get to play some sports with the guys. Again, the food is good. Like I get to learn philosophy. I get to talk with priests. We have mass and adoration every day. And so everything was absolutely like a dream. Like I loved it. I loved the experience there. The only thing I didn't like, we had a curfew, so I felt like a kid again. Things like that, but like that was just whatever. But everything on the outside, oh man, like I would have the time of my life really over there, and it was just really conducive to my growth in my relationship with God. My prayer life was great. But again, I just felt this sense of desolation when I entered, and it didn't really leave me at all, actually, my entire first year.
Wow.
Yeah, and I felt like, and then your people kind of just, when I explain this to people, they're always like, oh, Mother Teresa spent 40 years.
Like, yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get it. I understand that's a long time, but 8 months is also a very long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally is.
Any consolation or, this, any sense of, I made the right choice, type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, and I love Mother Teresa, no knock on her, but like, it's just sometimes.
Well, you're like, yeah, when people make the comparison, you're like, and I'm not Mother Teresa, so
yeah. So, yeah, that was a very, very difficult year for me to just kind of go through. And like there's a lot of things going on outside of seminary life, like just having a lot of FOMO with your friends and family. It's kind of like you're just cut off, like you're not checking your phone all the time also, so like you don't actually know what people are doing on social media, or like I can't just hang out with my friends as much as I used to, or go to this event or something, because everything is at the seminary, which is again also a good thing. But it was just, for me as an extrovert, it was a lot of growing pains for me. So that first year was very, very difficult. And at one point, I think it was like somewhere in like February, March of the second semester, I was like, man, like I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I don't know if I want to stay here, even though I felt like God wanted me there. There was a part of me like, man, this is just too hard. And I would tell this to my spiritual director, and my spiritual director was so good. He was actually like, every time I would describe my dryness in prayer, or like how I felt desolate, he'd kind of just like look at me and laugh, like kind of like, oh, this is so good for you. This is so good for you.
Oh man.
And at that time I was like, man, this is not fun. This is not fun.
Yeah.
But he knew what he was talking about, because for me, like being a part of CCO and you having these highs at retreats and things like that, I was a very feelsy person, a very emotional, prayer driven person, I guess. Like, you know, like if I feel good, my prayer is good, you know.
Right.
But I was able to, in seminary, like I guess God was allowing me to see that it's not all about the feelings, it's not about the emotions, but will you hang out with me when you're not feeling good? Will you come to pray with an open heart and an open mind, even though at mass it seems like, you know, it's becoming repetitive almost, or an adoration, like there's nothing happening, like maybe you're sleepy, or just like you can't hear God's voice. Like, will you come to me in those moments? I remember like doing rosary walks at like 1 a.m. around the seminary.
Wow.
Because I just needed something. Like I wanted to feel God's presence, and I couldn't. I remember sitting in the chapel in the dark. Like if someone was to come in, they'll be like, whoa, like why are you in here? But I just remember those desolate moments, and it's so vivid in my memory. But they're just so, again, now I look back at it, they were just such good growing times for me, because I was able to, without feeling good or without feeling like I should pray, I did anyways. And I'm so grateful for God to allow me to see that in my first year, that I was able to kind of overcome the emotions and the feelings, to just really be with him, and to love him, and to, I guess, remind myself that he's always there despite the desolation. And so that first year was very difficult, and I was like, man, I don't want to be here. But in my heart, I knew that if I had left the seminary, that would have been on my own accord. That wasn't God's voice telling me. It wasn't any of the clergy saying, actually, yeah, we feel like you're not supposed to be a priest or whatever. Like it was just me and my, I guess, selfishness, or like my eagerness to just like go away, I guess, run away from God. So I knew that I was not discerning correctly if I had left.
Right.
So even though I didn't have the greatest year in my first year, I knew that God wanted me there, and so I stayed. I had some consolation at the end of that year at a retreat that we had, and I guess it was my confirmation that God wanted me to stay, and so I stayed. I worked the summer, and then I came back for my second year, which was a spiritual year. And so in that year, it's kind of like a year of just silence and meditation and prayer. And you kind of just have a social media fast, or just a fast in general from electronics. So we didn't have access to our phones throughout the week. We didn't watch TV, so I couldn't watch any Raptors games, which was very difficult for me. Radio, but I don't know if anyone listens to the radio. Anyways, like we just didn't have anything. And that was very needed for me. Again, just having that FOMO in my first year, and not being able to be with others, like to really strip that away, like not even have the temptation to use my phone and everything, was a very good thing for me. It was a very good thing for me. And so it was in that year, we also had this 30-day silent retreat, and we did this, I guess, St. Ignatius's spiritual exercises for 4 weeks. And that was the January before the pandemic hit. So January 2020. And that was a very, very fruitful time for me, but the entire year was fruitful. But the entire year I was kind of just like, again, this wavy, like, am I staying? Am I going? I don't know, like, God, like you're telling me like mixed signals, like just tell me straight up. And so I remember my prayer going into that was, can I just have this heart of indifference? My spiritual director and I always talked about just being indifferent with God's will, like not kind of forcing him, not putting him in I guess a timeline, like, God, you gotta tell me now at the end of this retreat, I will know. But it's really like this prayer of the heart of, okay, whatever is your will, that is what I want to do. Even though it's like, do I really mean that prayer? Like, do I really want to do that?
Which is interesting too, like, because what is the prayer from CCO that wherever I'll go wherever you call me? Where does that go?
Exactly.
How does it go?
I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'll say whatever you want me to say, and I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me think of holy indifference. Like, that prayer makes me think of holy indifference, because it's like, if we're open to wherever God wants to show us, then we're able to receive or to see where he wants us to go or what he wants us to do. But sometimes it's like and we don't realize it sometimes, and sometimes we do realize it, that we're like holding on to what our desire for God's will is so tight that it's hard to either let go of our own will and receive like his plan for us, his desire for us, or to even see that we're holding on to something. So like that indifference of like being, like just being peaceful with whatever his will is, like not attached to one thing more than another. That's really beautiful. That's a beautiful prayer to have for the exercises.
Yeah, it was tough. Like, did I mean it? I hope so.
I think it's one of those things where you're like, I mean it as much as I possibly can, Lord. And then wherever I'm lacking, like, it's that, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief kind of thing. Like, Lord, I mean it, but I don't totally. So help me where I don't, 100% mean it.
It's like clothes that you're gonna, like, you'll grow into them kind of,
you keep trying them on, you're like, I'm gonna get taller, it's gonna happen.
They fit, right?
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of God's will for us, it is God's will for me to unfortunately leave you guys because I have class, and I'm genuinely so sad because I want so much to be a part of this conversation and hear what you have to say, Julius, but I will.
We'll just have to listen to this podcast,
exactly. I will. But yeah, it's been so fun just even so far, and like, you're awesome, dude. I definitely have so much like love and respect for you, and I can't wait to hear the rest. And I will tell everybody listening.
We'll learn lots. Okay, what class are you going to now? What
I'm going to canon law, so that's fun.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. It actually is very interesting, I will say. Our teacher does a great job making it interesting.
Sweet. Okay.
All right.
Have fun.
Peace out, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, Julius. Bye,
Bye.
guys.
That's so funny. Sweet. Well, see, this is good. She had to go just as we're like getting to some of the juicy parts, which is I mean, it's all juicy, but for anybody who's not who might not be familiar with St. Ignatius's like the spiritual exercises, do you want to maybe just say a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of like a 4-week retreat that's all done in silence. You'll meet your spiritual director every day, and it's split up into 4 parts. And so the first week is a lot of meditations, or actually all meditations on hell. The second week is about the life of Christ. Third week is about the passion of Christ, and the fourth week is on the resurrection. And so you're kind of going through all of these weeks with at least 3 to 5 prayer periods a day, not including your rosary, holy mass, like all that stuff. This is just on top of that. And that's kind of like the main prayers that are guiding your retreat. You're given kind of just like passages from St. Ignatius, as well as just like Bible verses that you're kind of just meditating on from your spiritual director. And you come with all your material the next day, and your spiritual director will kind of just let you know what's going on, or if he wants you to repeat a prayer, like repetitions are very common in the Ignatius exercise, or if he wants you to move on. But I was repeating a lot. Like, I guess there's a lot that was being said to me in different Bible passages and stories that I needed to really chew on, I guess, and allow God to speak clearer.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was that like coming to the end of the exercises, and like where were you at with kind of the indifference, and what happened in
Oh,
the months after that?
oh, yes. Wonderful. So going in, I had this question of, okay, like, God, am I staying? Am I going? Like, I just want to know the answer. Having the spirit of indifference from my spiritual director, like, this is what you have to pray. Like, you just have to be indifferent throughout this retreat. Don't give God this timeline to kind of just tell you. And so I go into this retreat, kind of hoping, I get an answer. Like, if it's priesthood, then it's like, okay, like, I will go hard. I will pray all the time, like, I know now priesthood's the thing. Like, I don't have to be in this kind of like the unknown, even in seminary. Even though the journey is priesthood, it's kind of like you're just kind of, again, taking it one step at a time.
Right.
So if it's priesthood, then okay, great. I'll be happy with that. I'm just glad I know. Or if it's not, then good. Like, I'll be happy with that. I'll just
Glad I
be
know.
glad I know.
Yeah.
So but I had to grow in difference. I had to be reminded of it again, because I would force myself in some prayer meditations, like, oh, this is the vocation, like prayer passage, like, I'm gonna know.
Yeah.
I remember going to my spiritual director and talking, like, like, I think this might be the passage for me. Like, this is the reflection God's gonna tell me. He's like saying, no, like, what do you like? Why you're trying to force your prayers? Like, like, you're not allowing God to speak. You're kind of just like allowing your mind to like kind of tell you, and then kind of just like mask it as oh, God told you that. So I, even in the spiritual retreat, I had to really grow in that indifference. I remember one prayer period was about the potter and the clay, I guess. And I just remember like going into that scene. Oh yeah, a lot of Ignatius prayers are all about like putting yourself into the scene and meditating on that. And so I remember going in there and I heard God say, like, will you allow me to mold you? Like, or are you gonna just like fight me on this? Like, will you allow me to just build you into the guy I want you to be? Even like one day at a time, 1 week at a time, or these next 30 days, will you allow me to just mold you? And that was just I guess the beginning of, okay, like I have nothing else to do but pray. Like, I just gotta let him do the work. And if I hear his voice on a particular answer that I've been praying for or not at this time, I just have to be okay with that and actually love it. So I went through all these prayer periods and I've learned like a lot of tears were shed in silence. And it's different in the silence because they also tell you not to communicate at all, like not just talking, but so like in your actions too with other people. Like if you see someone else, like, I don't know, like crying or just angry or whatever, like if you see another person having emotions, like you're not allowed to kind of just be like, yo, you okay, man, or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember and I remember many times where I was like, man, I really hope like no one see me cry or whatever. But they can't say anything about it anyways. But I knew like, oh man, that guy's having like a really good prayer time. And I want to know like what God is doing in their life. And so there were a lot of times during that retreat where God was showing me his love in a way that I've never experienced before, and allowing me to, I guess, get into myself, into the deeper parts that I didn't want to look at. I remember there was one prayer reflection on loneliness. And again, me being a very much a extrovert, like being around people, it was just like I didn't like to talk about loneliness because I always wanted to be around people. I didn't think I was lonely, but I know deep down, like even though you're amongst the crowd, you can still be very lonely. And I remember Jesus really honing in on that loneliness and there was this Bible passage about when after John the Baptist is killed, Jesus actually goes on a boat by himself to pray, and then he feeds the 5,000. And I remember in my translation, I have the Great Adventure Bible. It said that Jesus went into a lonely place alone, and I remember just my meditation was me being on that boat with Jesus and him kind of just looking at me, and he kind of says like, Julius, like, let's talk about this. Like, why are you lonely? And I remember just looking at him, and then tears are going down my face, and I was like, Jesus, like I feel like unloved, like I feel like I don't feel anyone's love, like even though I know everyone loves me, whatever, but like I just don't feel it. And I did this particular prayer period at the cathedral in Guelph, or the basilica in Guelph, and with my eyes closed. And I remember when I said, I feel unloved, Jesus was like, open your eyes. And so I opened my eyes, and obviously I'm in front of the tabernacle, and he says, Julius, I love you. And then he says, Julius, look up. And I see these beautiful stained glass windows of Our Lady. And then he says, Julius, she loves you. And I want you to think of your family and your friends, like they love you. Like never say that again. Like you're loved. And I was like, wow, like this is like insane. Like just to feel this love again. I felt God's love before, but then this was just another level of love that he kind of just broke into. And then in that prayer period, Jesus is like, all right, you see those crowds, they're coming in. Jesus like, let's go over there and let's help them out. And that's when he does his miracle. But it says in that passage, at least in my translation, that the crowds also entered into the lonely place. So and then that's when he made his miracle. And so I guess the revelation for me was, I have to enter into that loneliness to see or experience God's love for me. I have to enter into the loneliness so that I can also be fed, that he can make miracles, to enter into this place where I don't want to go, where Jesus can be like, hey, let's do this, And it was very interesting to me to know that the crowds entered, and the disciples were like, whoa, why are we here? Like, it's a lonely place. They even say that. It's funny that they say that, because I would be like those guys, like, why are we here? Like, we should get out of here. And loneliness for me was just a suffering that I always had. I just never wanted to talk about. But Jesus really, again, honed in on that in that particular prayer reflection. And so it was a lot of these gems from the spiritual exercises that allowed me to really just be open to love, and to finally be like, okay, I'm wherever you want me to go, I will go, and I'm very happy. And so I had to break through this barrier of just wanting it my own way, I guess, and trying to just go throughout my spiritual life, not talking about the hard things, I guess. For him, kind of like forcing it on me, like, we got to talk about this. But really growing in difference, growing in that love for the priesthood, and in that love for marriage, and that love to just do God's will. And then he was able to teach me about my vocation, or at least show me that this is the path that I want you to go towards. But it's more like, I want you to trust me with everything, the loneliness that you have, the suffering that you go through, the ups and the downs, all that. I want you to entrust me so that we can do this together. We can make miracles happen together, kind of. And so that kind of just precursored the reflections afterwards about me leaving the seminary, because again, I was open to just anything. And it was also another reflection a couple days later, where it was very clear to me that Jesus was not calling me to be a priest. And so I'm probably rambling a lot now, but
no, it's
This
good.
is great. This is so good,
okay.
Julius. Yeah,
Okay.
this is wonderful.
So I remember it was a reflection on the Last Supper. And I remember one of the first days of the spiritual exercises, Father Fred, who is the director of spiritual year at the seminary, he kind of just gave all the guys like an icon, like kind of just like, oh, here, maybe you can use this in your prayers. I remember the icon he gave me was the icon of the Last Supper. And I was like, oh, cool. You know what? If the Last Supper comes up, then maybe I'll look at it. Maybe I'll use it. And I remember when my spiritual director was like, all right, you're going to go to the Last Supper. I was like, cool, like, oh, I can do this. I went to the chapel, and I was just in there and praying. And then in that reflection, it was clear to me at the table, Christ was really like saying like, no, you're not called to this, but in like a very loving and happy way. I remember I wanted to, you know how, I guess the way that I pictured, I could be very wrong, but the way I pictured the Last Supper was Jesus kind of ripping up the bread and passing it to one side, and eventually all the guys take their piece and they pass it to the next side. So I was on the second side, I guess. But I was right beside Jesus. I kind of saw myself as kind of like John. And I remember ripping a piece of bread and passing it on. And then he did the same with the chalice and passed it to the right, whatever. Then he passes it to me. And then for some reason, in my reflection, I have this urge to want to raise up both, like as if I was celebrating the Mass. And so I remember just like holding chalice and the bread, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I'll just do this. I don't know why, but that was just what happened in my prayer reflection. And I remember Jesus kind of just like, as I'm trying to raise the chalice, he kind of just takes my arm down and he says, with love, like looks at me, and I was like, whoa, Julius, like, I'm not calling you to this. And that's when I knew. I was like, in my head, I was also like, wait a second, am I making that up? there's no way. But that love that was there, with that reflection about loneliness, was the same love that I felt in that reflection. And so I remember telling that to my spiritual director afterwards, and he kind of like was very happy, because now I wasn't like in the initial, trying to force my, oh, this might be the prayer, what type of thing, to now being like, wow, like, I think you're actually very indifferent, and this is different. Like the way that you speak about this prayer reflection, your demeanor, everything, how calm you are, like, that might be it. Like, obviously you have to discern more. Like, I have to go back and continue my prayer life and talk to my actual spiritual director back in Toronto, the clergy, my brother seminarians. Like, actually I have to still pray about this, but this is different. And I guess that was the first of many confirmations at that point. And so a lot of reflections still that went on, but a lot of fruitful things that still come to this day. I remember describing it as like Pokemon, like you got to catch them all. Like, I'm still trying to catch all these graces, like all these fruits, they're still coming from that 30-day retreat. But yeah, so that was the initial like, whoa, actually I think God might have like told me that I had to leave. So, but in discernment with the seminary, with the church, about becoming a priest, it's kind of like it's you, God, and the seminary, like the clergy. And so we kind of still all work together. But when I described my prayer periods to them and really how I was feeling and where I think God was calling me to, they all were like, whoa, yeah, that's wonderful. Like, no one like fought me on it. Like, I don't know, like I thought they would be like, give me another year,
Ew, we need you or something.
Like, I don't know, but like everyone just seemed peaceful, and I felt very peaceful. And then I talked to my spiritual director about it back in Toronto, and he was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like he was just
Yeah.
all smiles. I've never seen him smile so much before. Um,
Yeah.
and it was just a wonderful experience there. But again,
Mhm.
comes with a lot of hardship now.
Mhm.
Now that I have to, now that this decision has been made, I guess essentially, like there's a lot of things still going on. And I know one of them was like, oh, like I think I'm gonna disappoint a lot of people. Like
Mm.
there's a lot of hype for me, I guess, going in, because
Right.
it's like, oh wow, this guy was a CCO missionary, like this guy is involved in his parish, like whoa, like he's gonna be a priest. So there's a lot of, I guess, prayers definitely from the
Mm.
faithful, always asking how I am, like what can we pray for in seminary. They're just so excited for me, and they all mean well. But in the back of my head, I was like, oh shoot, like there's a lot of people who have prayed for me to become a priest, and I'll have to tell them I don't think
Mm.
I'm becoming a priest. And so that was a lot of, I guess, internal pressure on my part, because
Yeah.
I kind of just felt like, well, maybe I'm just disappointing everybody, whether it's clergy I looked up to, or my brother seminarians, or people from the parish that have prayed for you and
Mm.
have been excited for you. Like, oh shoot, am I disappointing you, or am I failing you almost?
Mm.
And even after leaving, it kind of does. There are times where it feels that way, because when people ask, and I didn't publicly post, oh, I left seminary,
Right.
but when people kind of ask like, oh, how's seminary, and I kind of say, oh, actually, I just turned out, like they act as if someone has died. It's
Really?
kind of like,
Huh.
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And it's like,
Mm.
oh no, like it's not a sad thing. Like
Yeah,
that's not,
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
but I think it's,
Hmm.
I don't know about everyone, but like a lot of people have this, I guess, perception that it was a bad thing.
Mm.
Hmm.
Like, oh, something happened, so this is
Right.
bad. Like,
Mm.
but it was actually a very good thing.
Mhm.
And again, people mean well, but it does feel like sometimes,
Right.
oh, it's like sad. Like, whoa, why are you so sad?
Hmm.
Mhm.
um,
Mm.
so that's definitely one of the challenges of leaving. And then also, I guess many people also kind of just nag you about it.
Mm.
Like they just never let it go. Like I work currently at St. Stephen's Chapel, which is a chapel downtown on Bay Street for the Archdiocese. And there's a lot of seniors.
Mhm.
They're very holy and very kind to me, but um, they also just never let it go when they find out that I'm like an ex-seminarian. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, but you should think about going back. And it's like, okay. Like, whoa.
Which is kind of so funny because, like, I think I wrote that in actually one of the preview posts or something when I posted that you were coming on. It's like, it's
Oh,
actually such a good and healthy thing when there are men discerning out of the seminary, because
yes.
going to the seminary is not like the final, like, you're called to be a priest and then you go in and that's it. Like it's just a formality, the education or something like that to be,
Mhm,
but it's like, it's all discernment. And it's actually such a good thing when
mhm,
people like discern well, whatever that is, like whether it's to be a
mhm,
priest or whether it's to go out and be married or whatever the case is. And I think, to be honest, like that some of, and I say this very delicately, but I think that some of the hurts that our church has experienced in the last little while is because there is also a period of a lack of discernment in some
mm,
seminaries, and a lack of helping men to really discern what the Lord was calling them to. And yeah, so I can see like how they might mean well by saying like, oh, you but it's like not everybody who can be a priest
mhm.
should be a priest, if that, like,
Exactly.
right, just because you have the
Yeah.
physical capacity or whatever doesn't mean that you should do it.
Yeah. And so I get like I don't mind. Like I get
Mm.
that quite frequently. Even
Hmm.
before I was a seminarian, they're like, oh, you should think about seminary. It's just like, I guess they see a young guy at church. It's like, oh well,
Right.
that's the path.
Mm.
But yeah, so I've gotten a lot of that. Oh, you should go back. Oh, why don't you consider, like, and it doesn't, I guess, it's not annoying, but it becomes a constant
Mm.
reminder, I guess,
Hmm.
um that you just would never let go. Like you're just now an ex-seminarian that You know what I mean?
Like that's your
Right.
identity.
That's just
Now
me
that's your
now.
identity.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
Julius. You're just like, oh, you're next seminarian. Like, why'd you leave? You know, why don't you just go back?
Mm.
So it's a little, I guess it's different now. I don't
Right.
mind it. I don't mind answering their questions or talking about seminary, because I loved my time there. Again, I loved my time and every single moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just becomes a nagging thing, I guess.
Sure. It's almost as if, you know, if you can compare, you know, discerning a relationship in dating, right? And then you break up, and hopefully you don't become forever defined as the person who used to be in a relationship with this other person and no longer is, because you'd be
Yeah.
like, I'm moving on, like, you know, or whatever it is, or something like that. And it's probably a similar
Yeah.
thing where
definitely.
you discern out,
Yeah.
and now you don't need to be constantly sort of thinking about that. You can be moving forward with whatever God is calling you next, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a really good point, though, because I think some experiences, even of discerning, whether it's religious life or whether it's priesthood or whatever, are not always like there's sometimes painful breaks with
Yeah.
the seminary or the religious community or something like that. So
Yeah.
which I'm glad that wasn't the case for you, and that there's not like
Thank
a
you.
real woundedness there. But I can imagine that would be really hard if somebody had experienced that, and then
Yeah.
if really that has somehow become their identity to other people, then to be
Right.
continually
Like,
reminded
yeah,
of that would be
exactly.
Right. Like, oh, she's that ex-nun or whatever it is, like,
yeah.
instead of just, okay, where is God calling now, or what happened? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
for me, like, again, I'm very
Yeah.
open, and I'm very happy about my discernment. Like, that's why I can talk about it, I guess. But it's just become one of those things. And you're right. Like, I don't know what other guys have experienced in terms of whether it was a bad breakup with seminary or whatnot. But I could see how the constant reminder, or pushing can be all hard
Yeah.
for some other people. So yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges. Another one is kind of just like leaving your brothers. Just like the fraternity there is different, because you're immersed in something much greater. I think you're praying every day, you're sharing meals, and just, yeah, it's just very different. And I think a seminarian can only know what another seminarian is going through. And so I remember trying to talk to some of my friends outside of seminary about what's going on. It's not the same. When I was a seminarian, it wasn't the same, because they couldn't relate to it. It's nothing against them. It was still good advice, but it wasn't just what I was looking for. And then so leaving your brothers and understanding now that there is a boundary, a natural boundary, between you two. Even though it's kind of like high school, you know, when you graduate, you're like, oh, we'll see each other again. Like, I can't wait to hang out. In a sense, like, yeah, they're still my friends. I still keep in contact with them, but there is a natural boundary, that we're just pursuing different lives now. And they're in the seminary and I'm not, and that should be okay. But that was very difficult because a lot of my greatest friends come from there. And again, the experience that we share is just so different, from any other guy that hasn't gone into seminary. And so that has been challenging, trying to find I guess, support group. Like, I have some guys who did leave seminary as well. So it was great to lean on them and to kind of just talk to them and, you know, kind of have this strong brotherhood, like, you know, keep the faith type of thing. But yeah, it was initially a very difficult thing for me. And then also just like the unknown again, like in seminary, you kind of, at least for some parts of it, like, you know, oh, after this year, I'm going into theology, or I'm going into my internship, or I'm becoming a deacon, God willing, next year, right? Whereas that is kind of like, I was so set on that life because I threw my eggs in this basket. And I always kind of think of, so there's this player on the Raptors, his name is OG Anunoby, and he was asked a question about his shooting, and he said, I don't shoot to miss. And I kind of think about that in seminary. Like, I don't go to seminary for a fun retreat. Like, I'm trying to be, I'm really trying to discern the priesthood. And so I threw all my eggs in that basket. And then when I felt like God was leading me another path, it's like, oh, right, like, what now type of thing. Like, now I have to go get a job, or do I even like school? Like, do I have to go back to school? there's just all these questions. And then like now I'm back into the world where the people I've graduated with, like they're on the next phase of their life, whether they're already into their careers, they've saved and invested, they have a good work experience now, maybe they have a family and kids. And I'm just going back to like as if I did graduate undergrad again.
Yeah.
So the unknown was also very difficult, like going into a place where now I'm really, really trusting God, but like this is hard. I think it's actually harder to leave seminary than to enter. Because upon entering again, like for me, I was all in on that. I knew that again there was a possibility
Right.
that you would discern out, but it was all in on that, or else I would just be having again like a fun retreat for a couple of years, which would be the worst way to look at
Right.
but yeah, it was much harder because now I'm jumping into the world again where it's so noisy. And it's hard to develop a prayer life again when we had this routine. For me, it was 2 years, but that was a long 2 years. Yeah, you have mass every day, and you're able to just go to the chapel at like midnight if you'd like, like those things I took for granted as a seminarian. I think because that we have the sacraments readily available, that Jesus is right there in the tabernacle, 6 feet away. Now that's kind of like, all right, I got to start anew. Like I can't be doing 5 1-hour prayer periods a day now. Like it's just impossible.
Yeah.
So how can I move on without, I guess, losing my prayer life, without, I guess moving in away from God? It's very easy to, I think, because now you're like not having mass every day or whatever. At St. Stephen's, for me, like I have mass every day, so like it's not an excuse. But I think the initial time that I left and before I got that job, it was like, whoa, now what? Like it's also the pandemic, so no one was going to mass. But for me, it's like, how do I develop a prayer life again, while also weaving life responsibilities where my job is not to pray for others and to study and to hang out with other seminarians. It's now to center my prayer life around everything else. So that was also
really hard,
very difficult for me. Yeah.
That's true. I found that even, to be honest, from moving to Ottawa from Toronto, because where I lived in Ottawa was right across the driveway from the chapel, and I had the keys to the chapel, so I could go whenever, like, and just being able to pray in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, especially when you can pray in a place that's like I don't want to say lonely, but like where you can be alone with the alone is a good way to, like, that is something that I found was such a gift there, of being able to be in that chapel like all by myself with the Lord, and like such a, like, there's something very intimate about that. And so it's like hard when I had definitely took that for granted, and then when you go into this place where, and also because where I was living, like there was mass every day at 12:15. It's like you have to go across the driveway, and it's like it's right there, so then when you have to fashion your life around, like, I have to choose to get to mass here, I have to know these schedules, and then adoration I have to go or see when this church is open, and then you combine it also with the pandemic. It's like it's hard. It really is hard. Yeah, for sure. These are so many good things. I'm wondering, like, if you maybe want to just share, it's like good to round out the circle, you know what I mean? Like maybe just share kind of since leaving, if there's any other things that you found really difficult, but even just what's like happened in your life and where you're at now, like some, I guess, even takeaways from the seminary of things that were good, but things that were also like things that have turned out to be good in the long run. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll basically just turn it over to you, whatever you want to share.
What do you want to leave people with?
Yeah, that's right.
What do I want to leave people with? Oh wow, that's a hard question. That I think the adjustment, this period, it's gonna take a while. I think for me, actually, if you had asked me, how do you feel about leaving seminary? I would say a month ago, I would be like not like I moved on, but like I still would have thought about it, like, oh, I wonder how those guys are doing.
Mm.
Um, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
now I just feel so at peace
Hmm.
with leaving, and that took a long time. I remember a priest at St. Stephen's, he just kind of asked me like, oh, how are you? And I said, Father, like I think I've finally gotten into a routine. Like I've
Mm.
finally gotten into a rhythm of things. And he reacted as if like I won the lottery or something. He was so happy for me.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know why, but afterwards he said, Julius, like a lot of guys that I know who have left have a hard time to adjusting
Mm.
back into the real life and taking the time to pray and build a routine with God again.
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of just like moving on to the next and kind of like occupying themselves with things, with busyness,
Yeah.
whether it's
Hmm.
good things as well, like a job or a
Mm-hmm.
spouse, like all these things. But they never really grieve and mourn that experience
Hmm.
in seminary. They've never fully moved on,
Yeah.
although they've
Right.
moved on, I guess, outwardly, like they've
Right.
gotten a job or whatever, have kids.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, I'm just so happy that you have had that time. And Saint Stephen's has definitely been a blessing for me to
Yeah.
have worked there and to just have that prayer time
Yeah.
with God every day. But yeah, he was just so happy because I've gotten into a rhythm and a routine with God that he feels like not many people have or have had that experience because they've
Mm-hmm.
either moved on too fast or they've just occupied themselves with responsibilities and busyness
Mm-hmm.
right after they've left. And I could see how that um, could have taken over me as well, because at one point I felt like, okay, like now what? I have to like kind of grasp
Yeah.
what job openings are there. Like, am I gonna start dating? Like,
Yeah.
like who's
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
so there's just a lot of things now that are occupying my mind, but
Mm.
he just reassured me that the fact that I stayed with the Lord and I was blessed this job, but to kind of go out quietly,
Mm.
and to just discern and continue just grieving and mourning, and then finally being able to say, you know what, that was a good life, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the life for me, and I can kind of like put my head to the is that put your head to the plow and move forward or something like that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Put your hand to the plow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Exactly.
yeah,
Hmm.
and just
Yeah.
like move forward. And I was very happy to hear that. And so I guess the last thing is kind of just like, if you've gone through that experience of a breakup or leaving seminary, the convent, or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to like kind of grieve it, to mourn it, and really take that time with God again. I guess for me, entering into the loneliness again and trying to
Hmm.
figure out with God, okay, like I've loved that life, it was a good time, but what am I called to next? And to kind of just keep moving forward. um yeah,
Mm.
so yeah, that's
That's
definitely
beautiful.
one of the greatest graces I've received, I think, since leaving, is that I've finally gotten into a rhythm with God again. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's
That's
beautiful.
cool. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. And I was thinking it just as you were talking, Julius, like, of course, you're talking about seminary and then discerning out, which is a unique experience. But like you just said, it's so applicable, I think, to like dating and breakups, or, any kind of big life change that you have
Yeah.
to,
Mm-hmm.
that was maybe a really good thing, but it wasn't the thing for you. And then you have to mourn it when it's done, and like take that time and not just be like, I'm fine. I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
keep doing the next thing and get and fill.
Yeah.
And it's just delaying that process of processing,
Yeah.
the change.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a good,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a good nugget of wisdom there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It strikes me too, like that. Like I really loved how you shared about the experience of coming to that place of holy disposition or holy indifference.
Indifference.
Yeah. Because it really is. Like sometimes I think we know that we need to get to a place, or we know that something needs to change in us or something like that, and then it's like we fight to change it, or we fight to like whatever, but actually it's the Lord's love that displaces things.
Hmm.
Like it's not like
Mm-hmm.
he asks us to let go of something and then he'll come to us and change something or fulfill something or do something, but it's like he like there's a desire from him and a gentleness from him that he gives in like giving us this love in a deeper way, like even bringing you into that sense of like loneliness and what that is, and showing you like how he was there, like how much you are loved, like really in a way that will be imprinted in your heart forever and ever
Yeah.
and ever, you know. That's like the thing that allowed the openness to what he wanted to give, so that what he ended up giving didn't break you, right? Because if he had potentially said like, you're not called to be a priest before you knew you were loved in this deeper and much more intimate way,
Exactly.
Yeah.
like that could have been soul crushing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think my time at seminary showed me that I wasn't able to love, whether it was parishioners as a priest or a wife and my kids if I was a husband. I was never able to love them the way that God wanted me to, until I first knew that God profoundly loved me as his father, and me being his son. And I think, yeah, like working with CCO and things like that, I think I saw God more as like a very good boss. Like he's just awesome. You know, I get all these things, get to go to these retreats and things like that. But I never saw God as father until that retreat. And then when I was able to see love, and feel and experience what true love really means, then he was able to kind of say, okay, now you're ready to accept what I'm going to tell you next, because now you know for sure I love you. So
That's amazing. I mean, I think that's a good place to like transition into God winks, but before we do that, like you're welcome to, if there's anything else that you want to share or say, or any last words. I don't want to say any last words because it sounds like you're dying, which is not the case, but
oh, I just want to say thank you for, thinking of me and asking me to come on to your podcast. And I'm very honored to like speak about this experience. Like no one really asks about it. It's just kind of like, oh, he left, but they'll remind you of why. But the deeper things, like I'm very grateful for that opportunity to speak about that.
That's awesome.
And Julius, now when people ask you, you can be like, there's a podcast, just go listen to it. It's fine.
I was just gonna say we can like print you off some little cards as a thank you, and you can just be like,
this was great. Like obviously there's a lot more, I think, but I think that was a wonderful time. Good. Really, yeah.
Sweet. Well, you did say at the beginning when we were chatting before we started that you had a God wink you could share. I
do.
So
okay.
I'm gonna let you.
So one day at work at St. Stephen's, I was just feeling really hungry, and I don't usually buy food. So I remember like in my prayer time, I usually pray after our 8 o'clock mass that we have at St. Stephen's. So it's probably around maybe 8:45 or something. I just felt so hungry. And I remember just saying, okay, God, like, sorry, I have to go get some food. Like, I'm just super hungry. And I bought some food. And then, I felt full. And then my volunteer came in with more food. And I was like, man, you're That's so awesome. Like your abundance is great. Like I get fed. I guess I should have waited. I guess that was another lesson. It was more like you're giving me more than I have asked for, I guess.
That's awesome.
Is what is the God wink, I guess, for me was that.
That's awesome.
That's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
It's super practical. Great. It's true. He feeds you with the Eucharist and then food and more food. And
exactly. Yes. And it never ends. It never ends.
Exactly. Yeah. Sweet. Oh my goodness. There's so much good. We thank you so much for being here with us this week. And yeah, I think it really is important for people to hear the experience. And you shared in a really beautiful way that I think was really kind of concrete, but also gave a lot of windows into what's like difficult, but also what's such a gift and what was really beautiful for you. So thank you for joining
thank you.
us.
I hope it's
thank you, Julius.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right, everyone. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you next week and to hearing what Rachel thinks of the second half of the podcast today. All right, everybody. God bless you.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.